Beneath the grand vaulted ceiling of the Zenith Nexus, the Terran's biometric readout registered a dead, rhythmic 50 beats per minute. Not a single plate of kinetic armor covered Vanguard Elias Thorne's chest. Surrounded by 300 apex warlords of the Galactic Conclave, the human was dressed only in a breathable fabric uniform that offered zero ballistic protection. Archon Lyra Solari watched from the diplomatic tier, her bioluminescent cranial ridges flaring a cool, anxious blue. To her right stood Pre-March Kalen of the Obsidian Hegemony. Thermal exhaust vented in sharp snorts from the Primarch's facial plating. Down on the polished concourse, Thorne rolled his left shoulder in a slow circle. Then, shifting his weight, he pressed his heel into the floor to stretch his calf muscle. Nervous fidgeting, Lyra concluded. The pressure of the Zenith Nexus was clearly breaking the unarmored diplomat. He was staring at the floor. Specifically, he examined a chipped flaw in the pristine basalt flooring of the hegemony's designated territory. A tiny imperfection. I warn you now. Do not look away when the blood starts to spill, because the real terror is what happens when they finally stand back up. The Terran Compact has no right to this sector. Kalen's voice rattled the observation glass, a subsonic rumble of pure contempt. Into the center of the hall, the Pre-March hurled a heavy object. The obsidian sigil struck the polished stone with a deafening crack. Pre-March, diplomatic protocols strictly forbid this, Lyra warned, her fingers flying across her console to initiate a legal block. The ancient right of trial, the Warlord had invoked, a lethal, archaic loophole designed to slaughter newcomers. Before Lyra could finalize the interjection, Thorne stepped forward. No armed escort did he request. Bending his knees with agonizing slowness, the human retrieved the heavy marker. I accept the dispute, Thorne said. Is there a designated arena for this? Or do we just start here? Mechanically into the lower levels of the Nexus sank the central floor. Live broadcast feeds locked onto the combatants. On her datapad, Lyra pulled up Thorne's medical telemetry to calculate an estimated time of death. The physiological data made no sense. Laced with microfractures, his bipedal bone structure had healed thicker than before. A continuous flush of lactic acid cycled through his muscle tissue, a bizarre chemical process the medical system highlighted. For sustained shock absorption, his anatomy was perfectly engineered. Kalen struck first. Across the floor bounded the Pre-March, a mountain of black armor accelerating to lethal velocity. Against Thorne's ribcage collided the Warlord's primary fist, a blow that would have instantly pulverized a standard diplomatic envoy. Like a dropped melon sounded the sickening impact. Backwards skidded the human, his boots squealing against the basalt and leaving dark rubber streaks on the pristine stone. Not once did he fall. Breathing and measured, even intakes of recycled air, Thorne immediately began to circle the perimeter instead of launching a counteroffensive. Pure cowardice, Lyra documented in the official record. Paralyzed by shock, the human was only delaying the inevitable slaughter. Thermal vents roaring, Kalen advanced again. Another concussive blow landed, spinning the diplomat like a discarded toy and spraying bright crimson droplets across the gray stone. Still, Thorne only retreated, deliberately dragging the massive Warlord in a wide, sweeping arc across the vast arena floor. Minute 12. The concourse echoed with the grating scrape of obsidian armor dragging against stone. Heavy, wet gasps tore from the Primarch's thermal vents, a sound like a failing atmospheric pump. Still circling, Thorne absorbed another glancing blow to the jaw. A spray of crimson painted the arena wall. The human's bipedal shock absorption system simply distributed the kinetic energy down into the floor. Above the arena, Archon Lyra reviewed the tracking schematic. From the chaotic rubber streaks on the floor emerged a horrifying pattern. Blind retreat, this was not. Across the widest possible radius, he was deliberately herding Kalen, forcing the massive Warlord to carry 2 metric tons of armor without a moment of rest. Those pre-fight stretches, the calm rotation of the shoulders, not nervous fidgeting, preparation for a marathon. This was the evolutionary nightmare of the Terran homeworld, persistence hunting. To Lyra's right, a sharp clatter broke the observation deck silence. Junior Scribe Kale had dropped his recording datapad. The young aide's four-fingered hands trembled uncontrollably against the reinforced railing. Never in his short life had he witnessed an organism refuse to stay down after a direct spinal impact. The sheer, terrifying impossibility of the Terran's endurance was cracking the hegemony's foundational myth of absolute invincibility in real time. If a flesh-and-blood diplomat could break a pre-march, the entire galactic order was an illusion. Minute 13. Halting near the northern boundary, Thorn casually spat a molar onto the polished stone. With the back of a deeply bruised hand, he wiped sweat from his brow like a weary laborer annoyed by a distraction. Sorry about the mess. The human wheezed upward to the silent diplomatic tears. Infuriated by the casual dismissal, Kalen roared. Forward lunged the Warlord for a final, crushing grapple. But his oxygen reserves were entirely depleted. His massive legs staggered, creating a microsecond lag in his usually flawless coordination. The gap in his neck plating, normally protected by a tucked chin, drifted open. This was the moment. Thorn pivoted flawlessly, driving the jagged basalt sliver directly into Kalen's exposed cervical plating. Into the Warlord's central nervous bundle bit the improvised stone blade. A choking hiss escaped Kalen's vents, smelling sharply of burned ozone and panic. To the arena floor crashed the pre-march, a mountain of obsolete armor, his massive form instantly paralyzed. Kneeling beside the fallen giant, Thorn pressed the sliver half a millimeter deeper, right against the vital artery. Yield, the human whispered, the single word amplified by the arena acoustics. A desperate, flashing double blink from Kalen's optical sensors confirmed the Obsidian hegemony's total, public surrender. 3 hours later, the medical bay hummed with clinical, antiseptic efficiency. Grand Strategist Vaughn had already visited, delivering a formal military salute that acknowledged the apex predator now sitting among them. Beside the primary observation viewport stood Thorn. Below them turned the vast, unblinking expanse of the galactic spiral. Against the reinforced glass rested the Terran's bruised forehead. Between his medically taped fingers, he slowly turned a small piece of chipped rock. The basalt was permanently stained a deep, oxidized rust.